How you guys doing? All right. We got you here for a while. We locked you in this room. We get to say and do whatever we want. It's my favorite time. So, just to start with this, I'm going to have you guys, what I'm talking about is kind of what we do as mentor coordinators, as mentors. We're mentoring in this place of Next Gen. And so I think this is a very important place where we start to talk about how we think about it, but how I want you to start thinking about how do you think about what you're doing here? How does this integrate with kind of what we're talking about? What do you agree with? What might you, how might you integrate some of the things that we're talking about into how you actually live this out this year with your mentors, with your students? So to start out, just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I went to Wheaton College. They barely let me in. Then at Wheaton, I ran a wildlife club. I don't know if anyone knows Young Life, but I did that for 4 years. And then from there, went and worked for an organization called Treehouse, which works with at-risk kids. Did that for a number of years, helped start one in Plymouth, which was a lot of fun, and learned about how to serve a whole different socioeconomic group of people that I hadn't really interacted with, and it really opened my eyes and opened my heart to a different reality and how God interacts with people from all different walks of life. From there, went and started my master's in marriage and family therapy, worked for Capella University for a couple years, at which time Brian plucked me out of there and brought me here so that my soul wouldn't die there. Man, it was rough. Being an academic advisor was not my passion. Came here and I've been doing this will be my 4th year that I'm in here. So I've been here 3 years. So that's kind of my journey. Worked with a lot of different families. I'm currently finishing up my degree, doing some counseling over in Champlin and working with families and kids. And so I've had a lot of different experiences, and hopefully some of what I've learned along those years and what Brian's learned. I don't know if you noticed, but he's quite a bit older than I. I like to mess with him that way. But he's been in ministry for a long time. So, and Dave and Amanda and Joanne, all of us have some experience that we've kind of poured into this and thought about, okay, well, so when we think about mentoring, how do we do that? So the first thing I want to do, and I'm going to have some you guys kind of chat with me here. It's hard to engage, I know, when you're sitting and listening, but what do you see here? So who's coming to Next Gen students-wise? Who do you see here, and kind of what do you see in this picture? This is a trip we took to Wisconsin Dells a number of years ago. Feel free to yell out.
Middle school, high schoolers?
Middle school and high school, yep.
Average kids having fun.
Having fun, yep.
There's some 2 cool kids on the fence.
It's too cool. Anything else you notice? Similarities, differences? Okay. Well, when I came here, working with Treehouse, we worked with people from all different, walks of life, all different races. And when I came up to Maple Grove, my assumption was white, middle class. Right? So you look here, and you might think that, actually looking at this picture. And so I don't know what you're presuming coming in here as a mentor or mentor coordinator on our students. And what I have found is that, yes, the majority of our kids are white. And there are a large portion that are middle class. But within that, there is quite a bit of diversity. People that are invested in their faith, people who could care less about their faith, people who are really good at school, people who aren't, people who are into sports, people who are in the arts, music. There's quite a bit of diversity, right? And when you think about our mentors, what do you guys think? Like, what, if you're going to talk about a typical mentor, like, what do you think when you think of that? Young. What else? College student, yeah. Anything else? I think that covers it pretty well. Young college student. That's kind of what you think when you think of mentors. And we do have a large portion of our mentors who are college young, but we have people that are out of college starting their careers. We have people that are in their 50s and have, well-established careers and families and have kids that are grown and out of the house. We have people who have little ones. We have quite a range of mentors in that range too. So as you walk into Next Gen and just think about our students, think about our mentors and our mentor coordinators even, there's quite a bit of diversity even though there's some similarities also. So it's just good to keep that in mind. And the next question is, so when students and even mentors come in here, what are the things that they're asking? And I think they're the same questions that I'm asking and trying to figure out in my life and have come to some kind of conclusions around some of this, but I'm still searching in a lot. Who am I? What is God's purpose for me? Why do bad things happen to good people? How do I live out my faith in the midst of all the stuff that's culture's throwing at me? How do I live within the culture without being part of the culture? That whole struggle. What is God like? What is this guy like that I read about in the Old Testament and seems kind of mean, and then in New Testament, that's the God that I connect more with. So how do I work with that? How do I understand that? These are the questions. And so we have this strategy that we're going to kind of talk about, this idea, this kind of structure that we have put in place. And what I really think is most important, and you need to listen, is to be cool. Oh, hold on. My whole transition there, that was not very cool. Hold it. And
laugh out loud, OMG.
Okay, here we go. Try it again. To be cool. And there we go.
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing. I'm hip. I surf the web. I text. LOL. Laugh out loud. OMG. Oh my God. WTF? Why the face? I know all the dances to High School Musical, so. We're all in this together. Yes, we are. We're all stars. That means something, you know it.
All right, so if you're not cool, then you can go ahead and leave right now because you can't be a mentor here. So to start out, I want to talk about my kids. I love talking about them. I bring them up as much as possible. This is a picture when they're a little younger, but we often go on walks when it's nice outside. And what happens, I don't know what this is about, but when I go on a walk, I go with a mission. Like, we're just out enjoying the day, but man, I'm going somewhere, and I'll be trucking along and realize that my son is like 20 yards back, and he's picking up those little helicopter seeds and throwing them up, and he's sitting on the steps, and he's hiding behind trees, and he's rolling in the leaves and doing all these things. And I'm on a mission, and I realize I just left him behind, right? And I think in mentoring, we often come to the table ready to mentor, ready to take people somewhere, and we're on a mission, right? And we get in it, we're in the relationship, and suddenly we're 20 yards down the street, and we look back and our student is still, not ready to be there. And so, in reality, I need to slow down. I need to go back. I need to go play hide and seek with my son. I need to throw the little seeds up in the air. I need to engage, be down on his level, and take it slow and be where he is. But yet, if I just do that, we will be going on a walk until 2 in the morning, right? So I gotta actually move it along, and we do have to get going somewhere, but I need to be there to engage with him where he's at too, okay? So we talk about this as pacing and leading, right? We need to pace and we need to lead. These are kind of the two ways that we talk about mentoring here at Next Gen. And so to start out, we're gonna talk about pacing, right? And how we kind of define that is three things: caring, listening, and having fun. That's how we define pacing. And we're going to kind of go through this a little bit. It's going to be a little shorter. We're going to spend a little shorter time, quite a bit shorter, on pacing than leading, because I think the pacing piece comes a little more natural to us. It's kind of within us to pace with people, especially at Open Door. I found that comes natural to a lot of people. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. But then I want you to kind of talk about who's someone that's paced with you in your life at your table. So maybe think about that as we kind of go here. So caring, listening, and having fun, okay? So if we to kind of put this down, boil it down into one phrase, it'd be meeting your student or your mentor where they're at. Now, mentor coordinators, next week you're going to be meeting your mentors for the first time. Mentors, you've met your students and are kind of just starting the relationship. Sometimes it can be hard to know what to talk about. So as volunteers would come in at Treehouse, or as I've worked with people that have come into ministry, when you walk into the room, it can feel like you're walking into a middle school lunch. I don't know if anyone has done that lately, but man, I've never felt less cool than when I walk into a middle school lunch. It's like I'm thrown back in time to when, I was picking my nose in the corner and felt left out. That's what I feel like, even though I'm a grown man with 2 kids and a career. I go back to that place. So this can be helpful. Where are you from? This acronym, all right? So F, family. How many people are in your family? Where are you in the birth order? Are you the oldest, youngest? Who do you connect with best? Where are your grandparents? Do you spend time with them? You can suddenly discover a lot about someone if you know if they live with their parents, if they have connections in a support system, if they like their family or don't. All of these things say a lot about a person, mentors and students. And so F, family. Relationships, who are the important people to you? Do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? Whatever relationship, start digging into that. Now, occupation, this aligns a little bit easier with mentors, but students, maybe don't have occupation, but maybe they're really into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or maybe they're really into art or sports or whatever it is that their occupation, right? And mentors, what are they pursuing in their life? So occupation's another one. All right, finally, motivations. What gets your student or your mentor up in the morning? What are their passions? So these are the things that you can start to, and I think these come naturally to a lot of you. But if it doesn't and you struggle to know what to talk about, acronym from family, relationships, occupation, motivations, okay? So first tip in pacing is that, okay? Second tip, I don't know if you guys know what this is. This is a magic card here, but there were a group of students that when I first started Treehouse that I was down in Chaska, and we, for some reason, had a lot of kids who would be labeled goth. So if you don't know what that kind of labeling is, it's usually dark makeup or dark clothes, kind of baggy, and maybe listening to hard rock and that kind of stuff. So, me coming from Wheaton, I was an athlete. I had nothing to do with this culture and had no idea. But I noticed that they played this game Magic, so I started to kind of, ask questions. Then I had them take me to a Magic store where they helped me buy a deck of cards, and then we went and we played Magic. And it was the first time that we started to connect around something because I dove into what they were interested in, right? And then there were times where I talked a guy into giving me these awesome Vikings tickets. And I took this kid to the Vikings. I love going to the Vikings game. I love the Vikings. And I brought him into my passion. And he'd never been to a football game, and we went. And obviously we had a great time, huge connection over that. So in all of this, whether it's playing Yahtzee or whatever it is that your kids like to do or your mentors like to do, be interested in it. Be interested in what they're interested in, and then bring them into what you're interested in, right? This is a great way of pacing that we sometimes don't think about. And again, I think this stuff comes a little more naturally. So we're going to take a little time here, and I want you to share with your table who is someone in your life that has paced with you, and what was that like for you? So again, pacing is caring, listening, or having fun, or meeting them where they're at. You know, something from Young Life that I'll never forget, and I don't know, this maybe is something that people say all the time, but I got it from Young Life, is people don't care, or kids, or people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. And it's kind of, maybe feels a little trite, but I feel like it's very true. In my experience, working with people, whether they are 12 or whether they are 40, they don't really care what wisdom you have unless they know that you're invested in who they are and what they care about and that you care about them, right? So that's what we're talking about with pacing. All right, so now we're going to go into what we think about when we think of leading, right? And three things here are, no, we have a number of things around leading. But first, showing, encouraging, asking good questions, and entering the struggle to become fully alive. So when we think about leading, those are the things that we think about. And so we're going to first start with showing. And I have a little video here.
Looks like rain again today. Dark clouds gather and fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how to say goodbye.
Have you actually got a driver's license? I don't think so.
Go back where you came from. Learn to speak English.
Go back where you came from.
That video is a little intense, but I think it makes a point, right? What we do as mentors, our mentees, whether students or mentors, what they see in us, they're gonna follow that. And so as we kind of bring this to our program, in my years here, I've experienced that some mentors come and they're excited to be here and they're excited for what just seeing their student, and that translates down to their student. Or mentor coordinator gets here at 6:45, ready to meet their mentors and have thought it through and have planned and are ready for it and maybe have prayed before they come, and that translates down into that relationship with their mentor. And then I've seen the other where they kind of stroll in late, they kind of aren't invested as much, they're kind of, we're playing a game that's a little weird and I can just see them out there like this. You are the dumbest person on earth. It's kind of, and a lot of times it translates down to their student. So how you are, like that's just a programmatic thing, but how you are programmed translates down. Now I remember my youth pastor growing up took me, I grew up in Texas, so he took me down to downtown Houston and we just started handing out blankets to homeless people. And me as a middle schooler growing up in a pretty well-to-do family just hadn't experienced that, and I watched as he interacted with people the same as anyone, how he was interested in who they were, and we just started to get to know some of these people, hand out blankets. That made a huge impact on me. And I remember I interned at this church too when I was in college, and Mel Gibson he had made the Jesus film, then he got pulled over and was saying all this anti-Semitic stuff, and I was very judgmental of him because he had, made this Jesus film and then wasn't living out he wasn't giving a good example. And I just remember talking to my youth pastor and him just saying, that same stuff that's inside him that's causing him to do this is inside you and me, and he's no different. He's just on TV. And that, man, watching him live that out and live out this way that he treated people equally, and that impacted me greatly as a middle school, high school student. So how you treat people when you're around your mentor or your mentee, it makes a huge impact. How you live out your life, they're watching, right? So showing, okay? Second, encouraging, right? So we want to talk about encouraging. I have another video here. And this video does have a curse word, and I've done my best to exit out and put things over her mouth. So if you can look past that to the actual, content of the video, I think it would be helpful.
Wait a minute before you go in.
I heard about your brother's conviction. I'm sorry. About why you've missed class so much.
I had things to do.
About this. The evaluation assignment was to grade yourself on the work you're doing. You gave yourself an F. What's that about?
It's what I feel I deserve, that's all.
Oh, really? You know what this is? This is you to me and everyone in this class. I don't want excuses. I know what you're up against. We're all of us up against something. So you better make up your mind. Because until you have the balls to look me straight in the eye and tell me this is all you deserve, I am not letting you fail. Even if that means coming to your house every night until you finish the work. I see who you are. Do you understand me? I can see you. And you are not failing. So, take a minute, pull yourself together, and come inside. I want a new evaluation. An F. Are you tripping?
That's from Freedom Writers, one of my favorite movies. But kids and mentors and all of us are coming in on a Wednesday night at program with all kinds of messages of who we should be, what we should be like. You can't help but have these things impact kind of our view of ourselves, our view of God. And there was a kid who, 2 years ago, who had gotten in trouble because he had punched a kid on the bus, right? And he'd gotten in trouble by his parents, because as parents, that's kind of what you need to kind of, follow through and make sure that they know what they did was not right. And he was coming on a Wednesday night, kind of feeling dejected, feeling low, like he'd messed up. And in that moment, his mentor had a chance to call out life in him, to be encouraging and say, hey, that probably wasn't a good idea, right? But that's not who you are, and that's not who I've seen. And I know that there's more in you than that. And I care about you, and that's okay that you messed up. And there is going to be a time, a mentor or a student is going to come here on a Wednesday night and feel dejected and have things going on in their life, and their families, with their friends, or whatever. And in that time, you have a chance to encourage and call out life in them and see the things that they don't see. And you get to say that to them and speak those true words into their lives. And man, I've done it, and it's amazing when it's like the Holy Spirit is speaking through you, and it's just soaking in into their core. And that's a huge thing. I remember in counseling, one of my teachers put up this picture, and it was a living room. And in the living room, the mom was sitting on the couch, and her child, her like 1-year-old child, was in the crib in the corner, and she had like a knife that was kind of next to the crib, and then she had like uneaten pizza around. The place was a mess, and it just, kind of what the picture was is like this mom is just kind of giving up on this kid and spends all day in the crib, and so that's kind of what you see in this picture. And the teacher asked, well, what do you see here? I see that there's a knife within reach of that kid. I see that, it's a mess. You see all the things wrong in that picture. She said, well, what if in counseling, in life, we saw the things that were good in this, that this mom is with her child in the same room, she has provided clothes for that kid, and that she's provided a bed, or whatever. And I think when we think about that, we think, well, you're just looking past all these bad things that they're doing. And no, like those are important, and you got to get around to those. But a lot of times in life, our job is to call out the beautiful things that are happening in people. Because none of us are all good or all bad. But this encouraging thing is about what are the beautiful things that you see in your mentors and your students, and how can you call that out and make that bigger for them to see it. Okay, so encouraging. All right, next thing, asking good questions. Now, here's another clip from Seinfeld, one of my favorite shows, so I hope you enjoy it.
I like sports, I can do something in sports.
In what capacity?
You know, like the general manager of a baseball team.
Yeah, well, that can be tough to get.
Well, it doesn't even have to be the general manager. Maybe I could be like an announcer, like a color man. You know how I always make those interesting comments during the game?
Yeah, you make good comments.
So what about that?
Well, you know, they tend to give those jobs to ex-ball players and people that are, you know, in broadcasting.
Well, that's really not fair.
I know. Well, okay. What else do you like?
Movies, I like to watch movies.
Yeah.
Do they pay people to watch movies?
Projectionists.
That's true.
But you gotta know how to work the projector.
Right.
And it's probably a union thing.
Those unions. Okay, sports, movies. What about a talk show host?
Talk show host, that's good.
I think I'd be good at that. I talk to people all the time. Someone even told me once they thought I'd be a good talk show host.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of people. I don't get that though. Where do you start?
Well, that's where it gets tricky.
You can't just walk into a building and say, I want to be a talk show host.
I wouldn't think so.
It's all politics.
All right, okay, sports.
All right. That's kind of funny, right? But as mentors and mentor coordinators, asking good questions and getting students and mentors to kind of come to their own conclusions around things is an important part of what you're doing here with mentoring. And so if, that's silly, but if Seinfeld would have just said, well, you have three options. You can be you can be a janitor, you can be, list off three jobs and say, that's it, that's all you can be, that's all that you have in you. I don't know how willing George would have been to hear that, right? But he asked questions and helped him get to his own conclusion. So an example of this is, we went on a missions trip this summer, and one of the kids was really struggling, feeling like he didn't have friends, and so his solution was to kind of mope around, to look really sad, to sit in the corner, and do these kind of things. I don't know if you've spent any time with kids, but not surprising that someone would do this. So, I brought him, and we sat and talked, and I said, here's what I've noticed. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on? Well, no one likes me. And I said, okay, so say more about that. What do you mean no one likes you? Well, they're not, no one spends time with me, and no one wants to hang out with me. I said, well, here's what I'm seeing is that you're doing these things. What do you think people think about that? Like, what do you think the people that are here think about that? Well, they probably think I'm a little weird, or I don't want to connect with them. I said, oh, so how would you maybe help them see that maybe you want to connect with them and that you're interested in who they are? Oh, so, here's some things I guess I could do. Okay, well, I wonder what would happen if you tried some of those things, and how could I help you? And so then you help them get there, right? Versus saying, hey, you're making everyone feel awkward, and no one wants to be around you, so you need to change your way that you're doing things, right? You're helping them get there. And not all, I mean, I recognize that maybe a new 7th grader won't be able to get to that place, but you do the best you can to ask questions to help students to get to a good place. That's within faith, within how they live out their life. Those are important things. Asking good questions, open-ended questions that can continue a conversation, right? All right. Finally, entering the struggle to become fully alive. And this is being intentional. And if you don't hear anything else around mentoring, I think this is the most important thing. Be intentional around what you do with your students, what you do with your mentors. It's what's going to make all the difference, okay? So here are some tips around this. And some of this is pretty obvious, but I just want to say it out loud. Because I know around prayers, I forget to do this. I'm not great at it. I don't include this in my life enough. And when you're investing in someone to find out what to pray that God does in their life, or how God would intervene, or what are the things that they really care about, and how can you involve prayer. And I love this in James. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. It actually makes a difference if we pray for our mentors, for our students. And I would encourage you to think about that. That is one way to enter the struggle with your mentors or your students. Second, involve Scripture. Now, again, may seem a little obvious, but what I like to say around this is what is transforming your life, what you are allowing to come into your heart and make a difference for you. That's what, if you bring that to the table for your students and for your mentors, that's what's going to make a difference. Right? So if you're reading Scripture and you're letting it soak in and then handing that out, that's what's going to make a difference. And so within what we're teaching on a Wednesday night, what is it around that talk or around this subject that's maybe made an impact on you, that God's maybe trying to nudge on you or teach you? And then, okay, so how could you then share that with your students when it's student mentor time? Or mentor coordinators, what your time in Scripture, your time with God, what is God doing in your life, and how can you translate that into your mentors? I think that those are the things that I found, versus just saying, here's the Bible and you can have it, you should take it. It's like letting it go into your heart and then delivering that. All right, third thing around entering the struggle. Now, I remember growing up in middle school, sitting on a bus by myself and thinking, if only people knew what was truly inside my heart, they would like me, right? Man, I felt very alone. I felt like this apple, or this, not apple, this tomato, kind of not a fruit, being left out. And how many times, even in that moment with that kid that I talked about, I shared a little bit of my story with him, that I could connect with what that feels like and how it's not fun and how you feel like no one really knows who you really are. And so the thing around this I think is really important is your wounds, the thing that you've struggled through, whether you've been through a divorce or a broken family, whether you have struggled through an addiction, whether you struggled through a number, we all have wounds this is life, right? And those wounds, in the moment, man, they're rough, but they can be beautiful things within the mentoring relationship, because they are the things that we can connect and share our experience with our mentors and with our students that help to connect us, help them to realize that there is a way out, help them to see that God is in their life in the midst of the chaos, right? So it's important that you share your experience, and what I would say here is appropriately and not too much detail all the time. So it's not always good if you have a middle school girl or middle school guy or even a high schooler to share all the details, but you can share what it was like to go through something, right? So it's just using your judgment in that, but sharing your interests and your experience, sharing your experience is an important thing. Okay, and so as we talk about leading, each Wednesday night, whether it's a mentor coordinator night or a mentor night, we provide some questions and we, try to help you take that conversation somewhere. And what I would say is when you're in those student mentor time, when you're in the mentor connect time, it's like knocking on a window, right? And sometimes that student is going to open it up and you're going to be able to go further in that conversation. And they're going to be interested in whatever thing that you talked about that night. And it's going to really stir them up. Sometimes they're going to be not interested at all. And all they're going to want to talk about is boys. All they're going to want to talk about is that kid at school that's bothering them or whatever. So what I say is knock. And if it opens, take advantage of that. If it doesn't, then go with where they're at. Meet them where they're at, right? Sometimes you're pacing, and then sometimes you're leading, and sometimes both. So you kind of have to go with where the student is at. But sometimes what I've found, and I even do this, is I kind of start giving up when the window isn't opening. And I stop knocking. And we would encourage you each night to knock and see what happens, and see if that student or that mentor is ready to talk about a little bit more deep stuff. So as I talked about, well, this is Dave's favorite part of my whole talk. I stayed up all night drawing this graph. There it is. To kind of give you an idea, a lot of times we think that mentor relationship is like a 45-degree angle. You know, I'm going to come in, change this kid's life, and we're just going to be best friends. I'll be in his wedding, and I'll be his godfather, and whatever. And in reality, you know, sometimes on a Wednesday night, you have great conversation, and sometimes you're like, why am I even giving up time with my family or time with school to do this? Right? You're going to have, if you don't have those thoughts at some point this year, then I would be surprised. It's going to happen. Why am I doing this? It's not making any difference. That's just part of it. Sometimes that's how it goes, and then sometimes you're going to leave and be like, oh, that was so life-giving. Man, God was in that. And so this is what a mentoring relationship, this is what relationships look like, okay? You know, the big thing here is be intentional. Whenever I work with couples in counseling, you know, what solves a lot of problems is that they just spend time together and are intentional about how they spend that time, right? So you help them do that. And in mentoring, you know, if you just show up, that's a huge thing, and we'll say that, you know, showing up on Wednesdays consistently is huge. But a lot of times if you want to take that relationship to the next level, it's being purposeful with how you show up. You know, what are you doing when you come here? When you have conversations, are you doing it for a reason? I played foosball for those guys, not just to play foosball, but I was there for a purpose, to connect with them, to help get to know them. You know, whatever you do with your students, try to have some intention around it. You know, and having fun and just connecting is great, but if that's what you're doing, know that you're doing it and do it on purpose, right? So being intentional, and I put a flower here because that's kind of the universal, like, being intentional in a relationship, right? Bringing a flower. Finally, here is my prayer for you in Ephesians. Ephesians 3:16 through 19. So I just want to read this to you, read this over you as you go this year and bless your mentors and your students. So here it is. I pray, and this is Paul writing this to the Ephesians. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and how long and how deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God.